the privilege of hearing the testimony of Lynn and Mario Potts tonight. Their testimony, I know, will definitely bless you guys in so many different ways, but you will see the pursuit of God after each one of them in their hearts. And I just want to remind you guys of how difficult it can be to get up on this stage and be vulnerable, and what an honor it is for us who are able to listen to them tonight. So we are really thankful for you guys and your willingness to share with us tonight. So I don't want to spoil any of their testimony, but they have a servant's heart, and Lynn is a nurse in the ER, and Mario is a police officer, and so a sergeant. You will see, and he looks like a police officer. He would be, I would trust him to protect me. But we are so thankful. Just their job tells you what a servant heart that they have. So for you guys online and here in person, we're thankful that y'all are here to be able to listen to them tonight. So I will hand it over to you guys.
Our story is a little different. We did not complete each other. We ignored God. We hit rock bottom hard and found the truth. God made us whole. Our love story began long before we met, because our love story is with God. We had to fall in love with him. He had to show us who and whose we really were before we could ever love each other.
So for me,
Want to share mine?
yeah. So I had 2 divorces, 2 children, and enough mistakes to fill a bucket. It's the road that led me to where I am today. At age 20, I got married for the first time. I married someone I only knew on the surface. I proposed from Iraq. From the first moment, she showed interest in me. When I returned home from war, we got married. The relationship was barely established when it went downhill fast. There is no Jesus, just she and I trying to figure out who we were. Shortly after the relationship began, it was pretty much over. My life was going in a direction that I did not envision for myself. As I was planning to leave, we got pregnant. So with my first child being born, I knew I had to stay. Shortly after he was born, the relationship dissolved anyway. Knowing what Ephesians 4:2-3 says, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. I chose to ignore these words. Looking back, I should have done a lot more. I should have given the grace that is given to me each day of my life. I should have included Jesus in our marriage. As time passed, I decided to date again. I met a second wife. Trying to do things better, I still did not take the time to establish a strong relationship with God or explore who I was. I went through the motions all the way to marriage. While dating, I noticed things that I didn't like. I ignored the conflicts and compatibility that I knew would be big issues for me in the future. However, I continued to stay in the relationship. She was everything that my last wife was not. However, I still felt that it wasn't enough. The mistakes I made here was I placed her on a pedestal that was unfair. Now I know that without God at the head of any relationship, that it's gonna fail. 1 Chronicles 16:26-27 says, "For all gods of the people are worthless idols, but the Lord made the heavens. Splendor and majesty are before him. Strength and joy are in his place. I expected my strength and joy to come from my wife. It should come to no surprise that she fell short on most days of my unrealistic expectations. After 6 years and another child, leaning on my own understanding, I decided this relationship was not how I wanted to spend forever. My second failed marriage, it really hurt. I felt that I just couldn't seem to get it right. What was wrong was my lack of leaning and depending on Jesus through my marriage. After I got back on my feet, I decided to live freely without any regard to anyone but me. I figured in this period I just might find myself. I became a serial dater for the sake of dating and not being alone. This went on for months until I hit rock bottom, feeling empty, worthless, guilty for not being with my children every day. I slightly turned to God, and that's all it took before I truly felt the pursuit of God. I went back to church week after week, and I began to sincerely and intentionally spend time with God. My life was not perfect, but it was better because I was allowing Jesus to take the lead. I went through a period of not dating because I felt that no one would want me with my relationship record. Of course, I knew Psalms 139:14. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. However, it wasn't until I heard these words from a friend that I wake up and stop feeling sorry for myself. I had a strong desire to create a stable environment for my children, despite the mistakes I made that made the environment unstable to begin with. I started to date somebody, but this time I was Omario, no facades, just me. At this point, I felt that Jesus said to me, "You've tried it your way. Now let me show you who I am and what I have for you."
Before Mario and I met, I was trying to find my worth in men. I was a serial monogamist, staying with men who treated me less than, in fear of being alone. My most recent relationship before our marriage was by far my most toxic, the most toxic I have ever been in. We both emotionally, verbally abused each other, and before I knew it, our words became physical actions of pain. I was trying so hard to make it work, I didn't care if we were ignoring clear signs from God that we needed to end the relationship. I didn't know how to be alone. I was afraid of what my singleness would reveal about my heart condition. Luckily, rock bottom came and forced me to see the real condition of our hearts. Through a failed suicide attempt, my then boyfriend tried to overdose and caused me to see how deep our pain really was. I was forced to see how deep our words and actions cut, and I needed to let this relationship go. I needed to allow God in because I did not like or recognize the person I had become. I ended that 2-year relationship feeling empty, insecure, lost, and completely broken. Then God used a friend to speak to me. She suggested just taking a year to learn about Lynn. I prayed and I felt that God was telling me, try me this time. Let me lead your life for real for the next year. I had been going to church and was born and raised knowing God. But until this point in my life, I had never allowed him to take the lead. Broken and basically desperate for healing, I decided the next year I would follow God. I would not date, but instead I would go where God sent me and do what he told me to do, no matter how uncomfortable it made me. For so many years, I had done crazy things for the approval of men, so I decided to meet God with that same energy. God was waiting with open arms. He changed me from the inside out. He led me to an amazing godly community and led me to Christian counseling. While in counseling, I dealt with sexual trauma from my past that shaped the way I viewed myself in the present. God's love became real to me. I saw how he was always with me. I saw that from the moment I was born, God was prepared to save me. Romans 8:28 states, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. This scripture becomes so real to me. God used all my past traumas and mistakes to bring me closer to him. He showed me I was fearfully and wonderfully made, like he said in Psalms 139:14. I fell in love with God in the process and found my true self. The God of the universe pursued me in a way that no other person had ever pursued me. He showed me that I was worth the chase. Come the end of the year, I was healed from my past and knew that if God could pursue me and show me that he loved me, that the man he had for me would do the same. One night, while at work, 2 little words would change my world forever. Interested, huh?
So I had a superficial attraction for someone who worked at the hospital. It wasn't Lynn. I would come by from time to time and send the occasional text message. That didn't go far, but I truly believe that it was God blocking this one. During this period, I was still somewhat dating and waiting on the right moment to express that the person I was dating just wasn't going to work early. One evening, I went to the hospital due to work. a doctor pulled me to the side and wanted to talk to me. I figured he wanted to talk about the patient that I brought in. To my surprise, that was not it. He told me that he saw me there a few times talking to a certain girl, and he said that was not what I needed. And he pointed to this beautiful young lady, Lynn, and that was it. So I went in investigator mode to figure out how to contact Lynn. It was May 19th, a day that I won't forget. I sent her a message on Facebook, and that said, interested, huh? That pickup line didn't go far. I was almost instantly rejected. The old me would have kept it moving, but not this time. I knew that she was sent to me by God. I kept pushing, and she kept rejecting, to the point that she blocked me from calling her. Soon she would change her mind and unblock me, and of course, I would call her the same day that she unblocked me. Lynn and I began to engage in friendly conversation. We talked about everything, including my current girlfriend. She would provide sound advice for my current relationship and never inserted herself as the one that would take her place. We kept this up for a month or so, and Lynn began to ask about my Christian values and my relationship with God. Every so often during this period, Lynn would express that she liked me in very, very vague ways. During this period, I knew that Lynn was going to be my wife. One day during our daily conversations, Lynn told me that she was going on a date that evening. I blew that conversation off, and it ended pretty shortly after. So I sat on my porch stewing over what she had just said to me. I received a message loud and clear that day. I knew that God had presented me with my wife, and it was time for me to pursue her. So with a 10-page text message, I expressed my feelings to her and asked her not to go on a date. And she replied, "Don't you have a girlfriend?" I told her, "Give me a few minutes," and I wouldn't. She went on a date, and I smiled to learn that it was not a good one. So a few days later, Lynn and I went on our first date. It felt like it was a day in the streets of heaven. Looking forward to the next date, Lynn said that this relationship had to be of God and not we ourselves. We agreed to enter in a period of fasting and prayer alone. This period was to get confirmation from God on the next steps of this relationship. When this week was over, I was pleased to announce to Lynn that she was the woman for me, and I was all in. We went on to enjoy a fruitful dating period that was followed by a ring. We all know that living for Jesus comes with great opposition from the world. My ex-wife would soon send a letter to Lynn's family explaining to them how much of a horrible person that I was. I had to navigate around this letter to my soon-to-be family, but to my surprise, Lynn didn't skip a beat. I think after this, she loved me even more. When Lynn and I walked down the aisle, I cried like a baby because I knew that she was God's gift to me. Little did we know we would meet our first child shortly after. Lynn was pregnant with Israel, and she entered a period of sadness and depression. Life was very hard for me at this time as well. We fought every other day. We also had a dog that was causing us a lot of problems. The dog was not potty trained, and she wasn't ready to get rid of him. She held on to this dog more than I felt that she was holding on to our marriage. Lynn came up with a $5,000 solution to get the dog trained. At this point, I knew we needed external help. So I knew I was right going into counseling, but little did I know I would learn a whole new way of viewing my marriage. I just knew that Heath was going to tell her that she was wrong after the first conversation, but he did not. I learned that I was looking at it wrong. One of the scriptures I remember from counseling vividly was Ephesians 5:25. For husbands, this means love your wives, just as Christ loved the church. He gave his life for her. Heath explained to us that the only way we would have a marriage that we desire is to be closer to Christ. This was a tall order, especially when he told me that I should turn my wife's deficiencies into acts of kindness towards her. Soul care counseling changed our lives and our perspective toward marriage. And in case you were wondering, the dog was gone by the end of the sessions.
The first year of marriage was harder than I ever thought it would be. Learning how to be a stepmom, a wife, and finding out I was pregnant in the first 6 months of our marriage sent me into a dark place. There was a sadness that I did not know how to put into words, and it caused me to fight with my husband and obsess over little things, like our sweet dog. Again, I knew that this wasn't the wife God had called me to be. He sent Soul Care to point me back to him. After Mario and I completed Soul Care, I realized that my husband wasn't the enemy. I also realized that my husband wasn't my source of strength either. Psalm 73:26 says, "My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever." This verse helped me realize that I was looking to Mario to be something that only God could be to me. Me and my husband are human. We will fail each other, but God will never fail us. The same God that healed me from my hurt and changed Mario after 2 failed marriages was the same God that put us together. He is the same God that will keep us together. When I stopped focusing on God and started looking at being a good wife, a good stepmom, a good mom to be, I lost track of my source. God is the source of all things good, not my husband or my kids. Finding my way back was the only way I could ever be the wife and mother I wanted to be. What does that look like now? 3 years post Soul Care and another baby on the way. First things first, me and my husband have our own personal relationships with God. Our relationship with God comes before our marriage. We both understand that we are equally messed up and we can do nothing without him. We spend time in prayer for each other because we understand who is the head of this relationship. We have decided to do this marriage thing with no exit plan. We took divorce off the table. Does that mean we never fight? No. We fight sometimes, and we go to bed so angry our heads hurt. But instead of looking at each other for the resolution, we look to God for the answer. What have we learned? You have to humble yourself and trust God, and trust the person that God gave you. We cannot do it all. And it's okay to admit that to yourselves and then admit it to your spouse. Proverbs 11:12 says, "When pride comes, then comes disgrace. But with the humble is wisdom." Pride will suffocate your marriage. So ask God for wisdom to see the moments when you are being prideful. Cover each other in prayer daily and delight in spending time together. Stay friends. And if you aren't friends, become friends. Keep dating. Make spending time with your spouse a priority. We fill up our schedule with so many things: kid extracurriculars, work extracurriculars, even church extracurriculars. We forget about the gift that God gave us, each other. Talk to your spouse when you are hurt and hold your marriage before any other relationship you have with people. Run to God, then talk to your spouse. Finally, show each other grace. Colossians 3:13, make allowance for each other's faults, and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. Recognize when you are wrong and ask God for forgiveness, then ask your spouse for forgiveness. Forgive each other freely and learn from your mistakes. We do not have all the answers. Honestly, we've only been married for 4 years. But we stand on Proverbs 3:5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. God led us to each other, and he will continue to lead us in marriage.
All right. Hey, thank you, Mario and Lynn. That was awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed their testimony. I've known these guys for a while now, and man, it's just really cool to see where God has brought you. Lynn, I think you said something very powerful there. How did you say it? You said pride will suffocate your marriage. Man. Oh, well, she said she got it from me. That's awesome. Let's hear more what you got for me. That's great. Man, that's true though, isn't it? Like when our own desires, our own flesh, our own heart is putting us more important than our spouse, putting us more important than our relationship with God. I think that's a beautiful imagery. That's suffocating. That's exactly it. And I remember the dog. We had a lot of talks about the dog, and I remember there was some pride there from both you guys. But also I remember you guys being willing to put that aside for the sake of your marriage, for the sake of your relationship with God, and look at the fruit that you guys can show of it. And so I hope you guys understand that look, we're all prideful people. Like I am the worst, right? My pride gets me in all kinds of trouble, especially with Karen. But if we're willing to put that aside, that's when God can do some really, really good things in our life. And so I hope you guys took a lot from them sharing their story. Thank you guys for being here and doing that.